So today I'm going to show you the one-person business model that made me over 10K per month and actually made me almost $1,000 to $4,000 per day. And I'm going to show you exactly how it is. I've tried everything from courses to e-commerce to YouTube to living in my mom's basement while doing copywriting. But there's been just one skill that actually kind of worked for me. This is the actual business model that really just helped me, kind of made it possible for me to quit drug dealing as a pharmacist, quit the six-figure corporate lifestyle, and just live wherever I really want. Right now, I'm shooting this all in Asia. I'm in Saigon right now, and it's kind of really changed the trajectory of my life. And I'll be honest, it's not easy, but I feel like you should kind of know about it because it's kind of like the secret hack that everyone has. And so today I'm going to break down what this business model is, how it works, the real pros and cons of it, why people actually fail at this, and who it's actually for and who would I recommend it for, because definitely not recommended for everyone, all while drawing really crappy diagrams on my iPad. So with a really messy doctor's handwriting too. Plus I'll also give you a free resource on how to learn it for free without a coaching program. And before you're like, oh Kevin, you're going to sell me a course or anything like that, the truth is I dissolved all my coaching and all that. And you might be wondering what this business model is. It's known as high ticket closing, remote closing, inbound closing, or the art of high ticket sales. And no, you don't have to be a Wolf of Wall Street degen to learn this. You might be wondering why I'm shooting this video. And to be honest, recently there's a lot of people selling this lifestyle, and a lot of these people that what they're promoting, they're full. I hate to say it. Mostly it's coming from really young Gen Z kids. They're selling the lifestyle, they're selling you the dream, but they don't actually really talk about what actually goes into it. And like I said before, I have nothing to sell you. I dissolved all my coaching offers. I only work with clients. And so sure, could I sell a 6K program teaching you all this? I could, but I think for me, I'd rather just close 2 35K deals in 2 hours and just make more money with way less effort. In case you don't know who I am, my name is Kevin. I've been in the industry for about 6 or 7 years, actually. I've worked as the head of sales for Ali Abdaal and have probably worked with your favorite creators doing this business model. And so I just want to share the truth. So let's get into it. You might be wondering how I kind of discovered this business model. So back when I was a drug dealer, during my drug dealing days as a pharmacist, I was really desperate to find something that worked. I tried to, like I said, do YouTube, sell courses and all that. I realized none of these business models would really get me to where I wanted to go with a sustainable lifestyle. Because as a pharmacist, I was making about 150K per year. And what I needed was more than just like $3,000 per month. And when I was doing something like copywriting, I remember my first contract, it was with a really good friend. He was a YouTuber. They wanted me to build a 7-series email sequence. And they're like, so Kevin, how much is it going to cost? And I'm like, I don't know. What are you guys willing to pay for it? And then he was like, how's $100 sound? And I was like, great. Well, looking back, there's no way I can make a living, like just selling my services for $100. That campaign, by the way, ended up doing almost like 130K in sales and revenue for them, which was insane. And I sold this for $100. And so what happened was later in life if you follow this channel, you kind of know my story, where a week in December, I get a call from my mom. She tells me that, hey, dad is in the hospital. He's not looking too hot. You should probably come back home. So I tell my boss at the time. My boss, he was one of those passive aggressive, and literally he thought it was a good idea to open up an investigation on my YouTube channel, saying that I was working on my YouTube channel during work and totally ignoring that I have lunch breaks and stuff, and I was editing that, and they fired me. And did I have a potential lawsuit for wrongful termination? Probably I did. But at the time, like when you're dealing with your dad's death, like you kind of don't want to do that. And so what happened to me was like, I actually had a conversation with my dad during the investigation. I was just like, Dad, I don't know. I've been wanting to quit pharmacy for a few years. I don't know where I really want my life to go. I've always wanted to do business. What should I do? And I don't know why I was asking my dad, but I think growing up, I always wanted my dad's validation. And during the end of his life, I started having a better relationship with him and opening up to him. He said something that kind of blew my mind. As an Asian dad and stuff like that, he said, Kevin, just know that you're very gifted. You're talented, you're connected. Whatever you decide doing, just know that we have your back. We're always family. You can turn back on your family. And that was my last conversation with my dad. From that moment on, I decided that I don't want to live with kind of the regret that my dad had, because I got to ask him like, hey dad, what were some of your biggest regrets? And I don't remember what he said, to be honest with you. But I remember the look in his eyes, and that stuck with me forever. And so I made a promise to myself after I passed away. I did take some time off, but then I told myself like, hey, I'm going to figure this basic business thing out. And so I did a guru course, got my first client after like 10 months of searching, only to find that it was really, really hard. I got punched in the face pretty much. I almost lost my first contract a month into it, and I had to figure everything. So everything I'm going over with you today is just through trial and error. This is kind of a real story of high ticket sales. Like finding your first client is not easy. Let's kind of talk about what this business model is, and let's talk about this for a second. So high ticket sales, it's also known as remote closing. And how it works is that you get leads from your clients. You don't have to do any marketing, and you just close deals remotely and you earn a commission on top of that. Here are the pros of it. There's 4 things that I have in mind. It's like, 1, it's really high pay, but it's based off results. So like you can make anywhere from $500 to $5,000 per hour, depending on the contract that you have. Okay. The second pro is like no cold calling or marketing required on your end. On the client's end, it is required. I'll talk more about it in a bit, but there's that. Third really good thing about it is like it's remote. Work from anywhere, right? You can even close in your underwear, which I do all the time. The good thing about this is that higher and higher ticket offers are more new normal. So back in the day, people would say, oh yeah, if it's above 2,500, that's considered a high ticket offer. I don't consider it. I consider the new normal is like 5,000 and up. But yeah, these are the 3 pros of high ticket sales that really attracts people. But is this actually the case, or is there something more to this? It actually goes a little bit deeper. So let's talk about how this business model actually works, because I think something that would have helped me as a beginner was to understand the real process, not just the fantasy of high ticket sales. Because you can see like what I was talking about earlier, if you're making $5,000 per hour, if you're going to make that money, you can easily see how someone can scale to even up to 100K with this business model. Is it a sustained 100K per month business model? Depends, but that's a lot of value you have to be closing for. You probably have to be closing for $1 million every single month if you're off a 10% commission. So there's that. What you need to do this business model is you need a client. Something that a lot of people forget is that this is a business model that is a service. At the end of the day, this is a service. You do this task of sales calls for your clients in exchange for money. And because you take on more risk, right? Because you're results only or you're incentivized by performance, that's why you get paid this high pay that I was talking about before. Peter Drucker has a really great quote. He says, all profit is derived from risk. So meaning the more risk you take, the more profit, right? The less risk you take, the less you deserve to profit. It's one of the reasons why when you work a 9 to 5, you don't get paid that much, because you can basically expect a steady paycheck every single time. And that's why I call this a business, not a job or anything like that. Okay, so back to my diagram. So you have your client, and what they do is that they have marketing. When I think about marketing, the whole point is to get leads. There are 3 different ways you can get leads. 1, you can buy, which typically means ads. You can do Facebook, Google, the hub if you really want to, if you're running an X-rated offer. There's that. There's borrow. So maybe going on someone's podcast and borrowing their audience and having their ecosystem go to things like your lead magnet and stuff like that. And then the third thing is build. So this is like building an audience. So things like YouTube, LinkedIn, IG, things like that. TikTok. I don't use TikTok, so it always slips my mind, by the way. But yeah. Okay. So you have your marketing arm, right? So your client pretty much does marketing here for you. So they're generating this content, this traffic. And what they're going to do is they're going to do a call to action. This is also known as a CTA. Okay. So this is a call to action. It might be to an application, a sales page, and to book a call. There's different ways to do this, but I'll just keep it very simple. So for example, one of my clients, Ali Abdal, he would have content and just be like, hey, one of the things that we're doing this December is that we're taking on X amount of clients for our part-time YouTuber accelerator. If you're interested, please fill out an application. And on the application would have a sales page with a video or video sales letter, VSL, that's what it stands for. And people could just book a call with me, right? And so your client pretty much does all of this for you, right? But basically for you, the closer, you do a closing process that is consultative. So that's why kind of knowing what you're talking about is very, very important. It might be casual, right? And you're essentially like holding space for people, kind of like a therapist, right? To be able to like make the services helping people make decisions as a trusted advisor. And I think this part is really important, by the way. This is how you really make money as your people's trusted advisor. And so the better you do this, the more money you make, whether they buy or don't buy, because you build a reputation, you build referrals, people get to know you, right? So long term, this is really important. And this is why I'm anti-Wolf of Wall Street vibes. So you don't need to do aggressive closes or anything like that. I'll talk about it a little bit later. If it closes, then you make a commission. There's two ways that you can make a commission. You can earn a flat commission. So usually this is about 10 to 20%. You can make recurring commission, usually 5 to 10%. So like, let's say if you have a SaaS or like agency or something like that, you can easily collect 10% like on top of that, just to keep the client, and you're more an account executive at that time. And then there's scaling commissions, kind of like a sliding scale and stuff. Not my favorite commission structure because it makes everything difficult, but once you close a certain volume, your percentage goes up and all that sort of stuff too. So that's kind of like in short how this business model works, right? And so, for example, let's say you close a 10K deal, right? You would make $1,000 for that sale off a 10% commission and $2,000 off a 20% commission, right? So you're very happy at this point. And the client, your client, let's do it in purple. Your client is happy, right? And then the person that you're helping, let's do orange, they're happy because you're helping them make a decision too, and you're not manipulating them into making a decision. So in short, that's how it kind of works. Sounds amazing, right? Here's the dark side that no one talks about. So one of the reasons why I actually made this video, like I said, was that a lot of people, a lot of closers, a lot of gurus, they're just selling you the dream and not really what goes into it, the struggle. They brag about the bougie dinners that they go on, the lifestyle, the Lambos and yacht pictures, right? And they talk about how much money they made versus like the impact of helping their clients. These are really red flags because I would say majority of the population, they get shiny object syndrome. They're so easily duped and fooled. And because young people, like when I was 20, I never wanted these things, but I could see past it. And that's why people like Alex Becker, like I love Alex Becker, but he used to have Lambos in his background because people are really convinced by tangible, really expensive luxury items, which honestly, props to them, it works. But for you that is watching this video, you probably want some more nuance and don't be tricked by these things. What these gurus don't talk about are kind of like the hidden challenges, why people actually fail. And so let's kind of talk about this. In my opinion, there are 5 different ways why people kind of fail at this, okay? So one, finding clients is hard. The truth is, when I did a guru program back in the day, a lot of people would say like, oh yeah, it's no risk to you because I'll do performance only. They're saying like, if you don't get paid, I don't get paid. But the truth is, for a client's point of view, who is generating the marketing, sometimes they're paying for those leads. So like the paid route costs money. It can cost $100 per lead, $300 per lead, right? If you're closing like $10,000 deal to spend $100 on lead, that's kind of a no-brainer, right? But it's really hard for people just to trust you. What makes it really hard though is like the market is oversaturated, not with experienced closers. It was actually because of beginner closers. It reminds me of kind of like dropshipping. Why it was so alluring was because back in the day, they didn't have to pay anything. It was free to play. Anybody could just kind of do it. And with that, everybody and their mom wants to do high ticket closing. I used to get so many responses, like people ask me, hey, can I do high ticket closing? Is this going to work for me? Am I too old for this? Blah, blah. But it's really, really saturated because everybody's blowing up their favorite influencer with the crappy DMs like, I close at 70%, blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing, people don't trust you. And it's a very intimate thing to be working sales for someone because you're representing someone's brand, especially if it's a personal brand, you're representing someone's brand. So it has to be treated with respect because it takes a lot of time and trust to build that brand up as well. But let's talk about kind of the third thing is like learning high ticket sales is hard as This is very, very true. So this is not an easy skill. It's not a beginner friendly skill. It's actually a very advanced skill. I think why it's so hard, it's like it requires high EQ, so emotional intelligence. Can you read implicit communication, explicit communication? You need to give or have genuine care for someone's well-being. And the third thing is like holding space, kind of like a therapist, and challenge people's assumption tactfully, right? You need to be able to hold space and challenge people's assumption tactfully, right? So for example, people sometimes will asking this for a payment plan. So you might say something like, hey, it seems like you have a reason for bringing that up. What's on your mind, right? They'll tell you their situation. They're like, oh yeah, blah, 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 money is tight, all that. It's like, hey, I can appreciate you bringing that up. Money aside, do you feel like something like this would actually help you? Because we could talk about a payment plan. We can try to see if we can work something out. But if this doesn't make sense, talking about a payment plan is just a waste of time, right? So being able to think like that, but it requires maturity. And when you're young, not saying that you can't do it, but it's a difficult skill to learn because your brain hasn't developed, and it's why people are so reactive sometimes, right? Let's talk about the fourth thing. They confuse convincing or manipulating as a trusted advisor. Now, this thing bugs the fuck out of me out of everything, because what you'll see a lot of the young kids do is that they'll use these manipulation tactics. It almost reminds me of the dating pickup artist tactics. They work sometimes, but you're kind of like pushing people into a decision. And the thing is like, you're not someone's parent. They're not your kid, right? At the end of the day, they're gonna go through some consequences, right? They're grown adults. And what we need to do is just hold the space, challenge their assumptions, make sure that they want to do something like this, because ultimately, and making them aware of the consequences for doing something like this or not doing something like this or leaving their problem unresolved. And it's kind of being like, hey, it seems like you want to do this because you want to grow your business, make more money, blah, 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 blah. But it seems like if you don't do this, what happens to your business then? And being able to hold that mirror in front of their face and let them make the best decision. I never manipulate people into making a decision. When I was younger, when I was like very new at it, people always had this concept of like persuading or like pushing people into making a good decision for them. But who says it's a good decision for them? We're projecting our beliefs onto them. Anyways, when you do manipulation, it's not long-term sustainable. It's not sustainable in the long term. I don't know a single closer that has kind of been a bag for a long time that feels good about themselves, right? It definitely does not feel good for the brand, so it hurts the brand. And then everyone is kind of like unhappy, not gonna lie, right? Having a sales process that feels good is really, really important for everyone, right? And let's talk about the last one. It requires life experience and subject matter expertise. I think this is important because most younger people don't want to hear this, but this isn't a hard requirement, but you need to be able to have empathy and you need to have somewhat of a subject matter expertise in what you're selling, because people are coming to you kind of like for advice, for direction, for clarity. If you're selling e-commerce, but you've never done e-commerce, it's really hard to speak as an authority. It's one of the reasons why founders do so well on sales calls, because they have a level of conviction or experience and they can walk people through problems step by step. Okay, let's get into the last part. Who is this business model actually for? So the truth is, high-ticket sales is not for everyone, and that's okay. So what are the real requirements? So one, I think there's a misconception in high-ticket sales where you have to be an extrovert, but this actually doesn't matter. You don't even need to love talking to people, but you do need a drive for holding space for people so that they can make the best decision for themselves. I've kind of hammered upon this many, many times, but desire to hold space. If you've never been to therapy, I would highly recommend going to therapy so that you can see how someone can bring up like counterpoints very tactfully without triggering the ego. Two, you have a genuine interest and ideally like firsthand experience in what you're selling. Like I said, it's the reason why founders do so well, and having shared experiences builds this sort of empathy or rapport that it's hard to replicate if you've never done a business model or you've never been through something like that. The third thing is you love learning new skills. So these are things kind of like copywriting. Like, for example, I write a lot of emails, even with high ticket sales. When I build high ticket sales systems, I have to write emails, automations. And so I can speak on that. And then with life experiences, I like to do things like jujitsu, TV, pop culture, YouTube. And these things, you can actually provide analogies for people so that they better understand. One of the easiest ways to understand new concepts or to have those aha moments is to build upon someone's existing experience and stuff. So there's that. The other thing, you need a healthy relationship with money. I think this is important because you need to look at money differently. A lot of people, we see spending money as losing. We see it as like, hey, we're never going to get that back. But what really helped me is seeing it as an exchange of stored energy, kind of like Bitcoin, how it's a store of value. The way I look at money is like making sure that an arrangement is sustainable for someone else and also making sure it's sustainable for us doing the services. And I think it's really great to just pay people what they love doing and helping support this kind of like vision on what they're good at, what they love doing and stuff like that. So that's why when I started paying my friends for paid services, this was a huge game changer for me. The other thing too, you love tackling challenges with first principle thinking. This means that you love kind of these mental games or mindset games that people play with themselves, right? When people talk about, oh, this is a lot of money, a lot of times they're thinking about what they're losing, but they don't think about the results that they're getting or why they're doing something. And so it's having these skills, like I kind of brought up an example earlier, but it's like, it seems like saving money is important to you, right? Like, let's say that they say, I don't have a lot of money. And it's like, hey, it seems like saving money for you is really important to you. And they're like, yeah, it is. It's really important. I was like, there's two things on my mind. Seems like money's important to you, but also growing your business or growing your YouTube by X amount is important to you so that you can X, Y, Z. My question to you is, which one is the bigger priority for you right now? And so what you're doing is you're kind of presenting a dilemma and letting them solve it too, right? And so this is what I mean by first principle thinking. It's like by challenging their assumptions, challenging their thinking sometimes respectfully and tactfully too. That's why I say you got to get therapy. It's like really amazing for closing. But yes, and then the last thing, which honestly I think is the most important thing, the infinite game at getting good. It's kind of like BJJ for me. It's probably some people's like golf, but this is a game where it requires iterations, feedback. Sometimes you get punched in the face, right? But it's being able to learn from those lessons, understand like what exactly happened here, and just make changes and make iterations of that initial conversation. Because of this, I am fascinated about communication, and it's really helped things from my dating life to setting boundaries to all these different interpersonal type of things. And people actually come up to me to being like, hey, how do I reword this text? How do I bring up this touchy subject to someone, right? And I feel like that's been really, really helpful. Oh, by the way, I have a free course. If you want to check it out, top link in the description below. There's no coaching, no upsells at the time of this shooting. I just want to share real knowledge, and I'll have a playlist below with kind of like a day in a life, how I drive clients, my scripts, and all that sort of stuff too. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Peace, mud people. Bye.